Every time someone comes to you with a problem, your instinct is to help. That's what good leaders do, right? Well, what if every time you become the answer, you're actually creating the very problem you're trying to solve? Your team learns that the fastest way to solve anything is to ask you. Then one day, you wonder why nobody takes ownership, thinks critically, or makes decisions without you. Today, I want to share 4 observations that could possibly change the way you look at leadership. They're simple ideas, but they're not easy to apply. And if you're a team leader or head of department, I think they'll change the way you develop ownership, critical thinking, develop your people, and scale your leadership. This is a story I hear very often when I work with team leaders or heads of department. A team member or team leader comes to them with a problem. They solve it. If an answer is needed, they give it. Should a team member or team leader not be confident about a decision, it's made for them. This thinking is what makes individual contributors really good. Their value comes from having answers to problems. So nothing wrong with doing the same thing as a leader, right? At first, everything seems fine. The team appreciates the help, problems are resolved quickly, and work keeps moving. But gradually, people start asking them about everything. They get invited into meetings or copied into emails that they really don't need to be part of. At some point, they become really busy fixing problems and making decisions that their team should be capable of resolving or making. And they start to wonder, why can't the team take ownership or think critically for themselves? Or my leaders can't make decisions without me? Looking back, it's not that the team members or team leaders suddenly became dependent, it's that they were trained to become so. You see, every time the leader comes up with an answer, an idea, or a decision, the team learns that's how problems are solved. When this is done repeatedly, it becomes a habit. The habit becomes culture, and the culture becomes performance. As a leader, how you go about solving today's problems shapes tomorrow's behaviors. That's the invisible force of leadership. And the next 4 observations drives home this point. Let's begin with what I think is the most uncomfortable observation. Your team is behaving pretty much as you have trained them to behave. And some of you might be thinking, no, I didn't do anything. They're behaving the way they want to behave. Now, I'm not saying every problem is caused by the leader. Sometimes people are inexperienced and genuinely need help. And people naturally repeat behaviors that work for whatever situation they're in. If every time someone asks a question, they immediately get the answer from you, or when they're stuck and you give them a solution, or when you make a decision on their behalf, what do you think they will do next time? Without realizing it, leaders are constantly rewarding certain behaviors. The real question is, are you aware of what exactly you are rewarding? I get it. You're more experienced, a critical thinker, someone willing to take ownership of something and deal with the consequences when things don't go the way as expected. That's why you're in charge. And so when someone brings you a problem, you immediately solve it and it feels efficient. You're doing your job as a leader. But every fast answer and decision creates a slow team. Over time, people start thinking before they ask you because you have shown them that your answer is the fastest way. And so the team starts giving you as many issues as they have, and you end up becoming the bottleneck. Not that your team isn't capable, but because you have unintentionally made thinking unnecessary. Now, instead of rewarding questions, reward thinking. Rather than give the answer, pause then ask, what have you already thought of? What options do you see? What would you do if I wasn't here? You're not trying to not come up with the solution because the team member or team leader might actually need help. Instead, these questions are meant to return the thinking to the person who owns the work. Eventually, your team will stop bringing you only problems because they've realized you will send them back to think through. They will instead start bringing you recommendations to run by you for your approval before proceeding with what they had planned. But this raises another question. If leaders shouldn't always provide the answer, what does helping actually look like? Because helping and developing aren't always the same thing. One of the biggest shifts in any leader's journey was realizing that helping and developing are completely different. Helping solves today's work or developing builds tomorrow's capabilities. That's why I always say delegation is development. Every time you delegate appropriately, you're developing someone else's judgment, confidence, critical thinking, and ownership. Every time you don't delegate, when you could have, you're quietly developing dependency. Many leaders help because it's faster. You solve today's problems in 2 minutes instead of spending 20 minutes coaching someone. But every shortcut earns compound interest. Soon your team waits for your approval before making decisions. Projects slow down, meetings become longer, you become the bottleneck, not because you want to control, but because you've trained everyone to depend on you. Instead of asking, how quickly can I solve this? Ask, how can I enable this person to solve their own problem? If someone is new to the work, then it might be giving the answer while showing them how to get it for themselves next time. If someone has some experience doing the work, then you can consider coaching them towards the answer while dropping hints along the way to fill in gaps in their understanding. And if someone has done the work enough times and you think they're just being lazy, then you can let them struggle a bit. That's how confidence, ownership, and critical thinking are built, one delegation at a time. Delegation isn't about getting work off your plate. It's about putting growth onto someone else's. And that's how you scale your leadership. But delegation alone doesn't develop people. Development happens more so in everyday conversations. So how can you use those conversations to build better critical thinkers who own their work? That's what the third observation is about. And if you found this video helpful so far, I would appreciate it if you hit that like button. It helps the channel a lot. Thank you. If you know that every conversation can develop someone in your team, how would that change the way you lead them? The question to ask here is, what are you developing? Every interaction leaves the other person slightly changed. They might become more confident, more accountable, or more dependent. Nobody walks away unchanged. That's why I said earlier that every interaction trains your team. Every conversation answers one question. What gets rewarded around here? If people get rewarded for bringing problems, they'll keep bringing problems. If they get rewarded for bringing ideas and recommendations, they will bring more ideas and recommendations. Leadership becomes much simpler when we understand that people naturally repeat the behaviors that leaders consistently reinforce. Imagine two leaders receiving the same question. One immediately gives the answer. The other pauses and asks, "What do you think? What options have you considered? What would you recommend?" The difference isn't the questions themselves. The difference is where the thinking happens. The former believes coaching takes time, which they don't have or choose not to give priority for. Now, of course, coaching takes time, initially. Over time, coaching reduces dependency because people become better at solving more problems themselves instead of bringing everything back to the leader. Now, of course, we need to be sensitive to how much coaching someone can take at any one time, as some might be more coachable than others. Putting in the time and effort investment now to develop your people through coaching pays off in the longer run. So, here's something I recommend for all leaders. Instead of giving answers, ask questions such as, what have you already tried? What support do you need from me? When you ask questions, you're getting the other person to develop their thinking, not replace it with your answers. Eventually, the team stops bringing empty-handed problems because they know you will only ask them for what they have thought of and for their answers. They start bringing recommendations backed by their own analysis because now they only need your approval to proceed. That's how ownership and critical thinking grows. Not because you demanded it, but because you created an environment where critical thinking and taking ownership becomes the expected behavior and is rewarded for it. Developing one person is a great start, but leadership isn't just about individuals. It's about building a team culture where everybody thinks this way. And that's what the fourth observation is about. When people hear the word culture, they often think about vision statements, company values, or posters on the wall. They think culture is from the CEO. But I think culture is much simpler than that. Culture is repeated expectations and behaviors. It's what people experience every day through meetings, conversations, and decisions. Every repeated interaction quietly teaches people, this is how we work around here. And it doesn't matter whether it is a team, a department, or a business unit. There are cultures within each layer of any organization. If you're a leader and you have never explicitly set clear expectations and explain what those are, then naturally people are going to push decisions upward. Not because they're lazy, but because it's safer, especially when boundaries and expectations are not set in stone or black and white. If the boss makes the decision, the boss owns the consequences. Over time, dependency feels efficient, but the capabilities of the team members stop growing. Now imagine this happening across an entire department. Employees wait for team leaders wait for the head of the department. Eventually, every important decision reaches one person. That's not scaling leadership, that's scaling dependency. And naturally, frustration, poor communication, employee disengagement kicks in all over when that happens. One of the simplest expectations you can introduce is this. Don't just bring me a problem. Bring me your thinking, context, understanding, and recommendation. We will improve it together. I'll provide you all the support you need that I can give. But don't outsource your thinking to me. It's your responsibility to think and make decisions at your level. Now, this applies even to those employees who don't want to think, because when you make the expectations clear and reinforce through concerned conversations, then it becomes clear to all that you will not tolerate poor behaviors in the workplace. Over time, meetings improve, conversations become richer, and people become more confident because they are expected to think before they speak. That's how culture is built. Not through speeches, but through daily conversations. The higher up you lead, the less valuable your own answers become. Your real value is improving the quality of everyone else's capabilities to come up with answers of their own. Today, we looked at 4 observations. First, your team is often behaving exactly as you have trained them. People repeat the behaviors that leaders consistently reward. Second, helping isn't the same as developing. Helping solve today's problems, while developing builds tomorrow's capabilities. Delegation isn't just about sharing work. Delegation is developmental. It's about growing people. Third, every conversation is developmental. Every interaction teaches your team what gets rewarded. If you reward thinking, you will build thinkers. If you reward dependency, you will keep getting dependency. Finally, team culture is built one conversation at a time based on clear expectations. When your conversations are guided by clear and explicit expectations, then behaviors on how your team works, thinks, and makes decisions are shaped by it. The bigger leadership lesson here is this. Leadership isn't measured by how many problems you solve. That's individual contributor or team member thinking. It's measured by how many people can solve problems without you. Now, that's leadership thinking. As you move from individual contributor to team leader and eventually to head of department or even business unit leader, your value changes. Your value no longer comes from having the best answers or ideas. It comes from developing people who can think, decide, and lead without constantly relying on you. The critical shift is going from how can I solve this problem to asking how can I help this person to solve their own problem without needing me the next time. That shift in thinking will change the way you lead. If you found this video helpful, I appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel where we explore practical leadership ideas that help you develop people and scale your leadership. And if you would like today's one-page worksheet to help you apply these ideas with your own team, do sign up to our mailing list using the link in the description below. Finally, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these 4 observations resonated with you the most? Or have you experienced another reason why teams keep bringing every problem to their leader? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And here's a video where your team isn't lazy, they're just responding to your leadership. Check it out here.